Hey there, listeners. Sarah here, letting you know that we have an exciting anniversary coming up. Humanist Trek turns 1 year old September 8th, Star Trek Day. We want you to help us celebrate. Record a quick audio clip. Tell us who you are, where you're from, why you listen, what your favorite thing about the show is, or just whatever you like, and we'll play them on our 1 year anniversary episode. This doesn't have to be a polished production. Just record a voice note on your phone or something and send it over via subspace message to podcast@humanisttrek.com. We're excited to celebrate this milestone, and we're so happy that you're on this journey with us.
This episode of Star Trek includes scenes of sexual assault. Therefore, this episode of Humanist Trek includes discussions of this topic. Listener discretion is advised.
Perhaps I could use this as an excuse to go to those far-off planets with little polka-dotted people if necessary, and be able to talk about love, war, nature, God, sex, all those things that go to make up the excitement of the human condition.
I'm Captain James Kirk. Spock.
Your move, Captain.
Jim Kirk of the Enterprise.
What's going on?
I'm James Kirk. These people are my friends and my shipmates. Leave my crew alone.
Out of the question.
How about that?
James Kirk.
It fits like a glove, Captain.
Oh, the bonehead ideas.
Gentlemen, I'm Captain James Kirk. Get out of my chair. Get out of it now.
My greetings and felicitations, Captain. So good of you and your officers to, drop in. Absolutely smashing.
Domo arigato, Mr. Mugato, and welcome to Humanist Trek. It's a Star Trek podcast about the humanism in Star Trek. I'm Sarah Ray.
And I'm Allie Ashmead.
Domo arigato, Allie.
Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto. I am what is it?
I don't know. I listened to that album over and over and over again.
I am the
modern man.
Secret. I've got a secret with parts made in Japan. Secret. Okay.
So let me tell you a story of how yesterday my 13-year-old son lost his Apple Watch.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't know all the details because I wasn't there and I didn't get the story, as it was playing out. But Becca went to pick him up from school and he realized he didn't have his watch. And so they went through the process of like, where's the watch? And then I'm on the phone on the tracking thing, like, okay, this is where it says it is. And they were in the school, and that school, I don't know if they have like a Wi-Fi or signal blocker or something in the school, but it seems like they do because the signal right in the school area is shit.
Probably. They probably do.
Apparently they tried to go into the office and talk to somebody about it, and they ran into the PE coach and the one that really likes my son, and he was very helpful in like, well, we can do this, you can do that, whatever, suggestions or whatever. And that he was like, I'm going to chew the 7th grade punks' asses out tomorrow. Because I guess what happened was he was in the locker room and he thinks it like fell out of his bag or his pocket or whatever. And he didn't notice. And so then he left. And then the only class that comes in behind him is a 7th grade class. So he thinks that one of those kids picked it up and made off with it. That is this is CSI middle school. So that's what we think happened to it. Well, I went on the tracking app and I tracked it to this sidewalk between the middle school and the high school. And it's actually a sidewalk that goes like from the high school into the track.
Mm-hmm.
But it was doing that weird thing where like it showed it in a wide radius and then it would spin and spin and spin. And then a couple of minutes would go by and then it would zoom right down to that one spot. And it was like one spot on a sidewalk. This is where it's at. And then it would go back to that white. So I don't know how accurate it was. I don't know when he started out the day with the watch at 17%. So it was probably dead anyway. He started out the day with 17% power because he dropped it getting out of the Jeep the day before after school. And it was laying on the floor of the garage under my vehicle, which I backed out and took the other kid to school. And I don't, right? Who knows? Anyway.
Okay. Past behavior. Okay.
So they went into the office. They talked to the person who was his 7th grade counselor. He's in 8th grade now. And we had several meetings with this individual because of bullying and an attack that happened on him in the bathroom and so on and so forth. She came out and her solution was to say, well, Apple Watches are banned. He shouldn't have had it on him anyway. It should have been in his locker. So anyway, this morning we went out back to the sidewalk where this thing was last pinged. And the last location was like a trash can on the sidewalk going to the football field. So we took a bag and gloves and the whole nine and like emptied out this garbage can and transferred it back to the garbage can. And we did not find the watch. And so here we are. And unfortunately for his mental health, and I understand why adults like keep their kids from adult things, but he's 13. We've never treated either of them like, babies. We've always treated them like little adults. And he knows that my job situation is causing financial hardship on the family. And like, we're really, really worried. And he knows that. Right. And so then he loses a $300 watch and he's like, fuck. And he just had a complete meltdown after school last night because he lost this thing. I feel bad for him. Like, in the end of the day, it's just a thing. Right. You didn't get hurt. Nothing happened to you. Like, it's just a thing, and the thing can be replaced.
But it's his thing.
Yeah.
It's anytime, and I get it. Whenever you lose something, or it could have even been stolen from him, but it's something you care about, and you go over it in your mind. Where what did I do? How, So I think it's normal. And
yeah, for sure. So I don't know. Hopefully it'll turn up. We'll check the lost and found at both high school and middle school, and see if something comes up.
Yeah. I lost my phone years ago when I was in Paris. I lost it at the Eiffel Tower.
Oh, shit.
So I know what he's feeling like, because he's like, fuck, I lost his phone. Not to mention the cost, but just the thing, it's his. It's his possession. And
Well, he already doesn't have a real positive outlook on other people. As hard as we've tried to prevent that from happening, he is a teenager after all. And now that like some kid presumably took his watch and did God knows what with it, now he's really like, fuck everybody.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost as if Klingons have armed the other side and turned them all against him. Best I got this week. All right, friends, let's talk about Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 19, A Private Little War.
Sir, contact with an object. It's moving toward us. No visual contact yet.
Deflectors, full intensity.
Mr. Sulu. Yes, Captain. Anything on your scanners? It's coming at light speed.
Collision course. Visual contact.
Anything, over?
All wavelengths dominated by ionization effects, sir.
All engines full stop.
So this episode starts on a rocky planet.
I did love the beginning shot of them orbiting some planet. It kind of looks like Earth. I mean, it's got like seas and land masses. And so that was kind of cool.
McCoy is gathering samples when he gets a call from Kirk checking in. McCoy's pretty excited about these plant samples that he's taking because they have a lot of potential for medicinal use. And we cut to Kirk and Spock, who we see are also on the planet, and they have discovered some tracks in the dirt. And Kirk's like, these are rabbit prints, Spock. I recognize this from that other episode.
Spock already knows it's some kind of like ape-like carnivore, and Kirk confirms it's the Mugato.
McCoy says it about 17 different ways, I think, in this episode.
Okay, so we'll butcher it as we go along, too.
Yeah.
So Kirk confirms it's the Mogatu. He'd been on this planet before, and it's not a problem, though, because the prints are several days old, and they don't stay in one place, so they're probably safe.
So we get a ton of exposition right at the top of this episode, right? Apparently, this planet was brash young Lieutenant Kirk's first planet survey, and in his report, he called it a Garden of Eden. Oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
So Earth-like Class M planet, but these inhabitants didn't evolve into spacefaring people. They're still using bows and arrows for hunting. But there's no evidence that they fight among themselves at all. So very peaceful, very Eden-like.
And it was as if the universe heard him, as if to say, watch this.
Hey, Jimmy boy, hold my beer.
I know. As he was just talking about how peaceful and tranquil they are, we hear a voice in the distance that says, take cover here. And they go off to see what this is. And they see like 3 primitive villagers crouching behind a rock.
These are villagers, but somehow it's like the game was changed from peaceful to what the fuck, because these villagers have heaters.
They got heaters. That was a far cry from what Kirk had just said.
Right. When he surveyed the planet, they hadn't advanced nearly this far and shouldn't have been at this point in that cultural evolution.
So Spock is like, bows and arrows, Captain?
Mm-hmm.
And Kirk is completely shocked. He's like, that's impossible that they have flintlocks, which are these, I guess, these long, old-timey guns from the 1800s. And then suddenly we see another group of hunters approaching, and they are the ones with the bows and arrows, and they're all blonde.
Mm-hmm.
So the first group of villagers are dark-haired, and then these guys are blonde.
The blondies are about to walk right into the ambush. And Kirk recognizes one of them as Tyree, a friend that he lived here with when he was here. And Spock's like, a male roommate friend, Captain? It's the 23rd century. You don't have to hide anymore.
Exactly.
This is your college roommate. Wink.
Everyone experimented in college to find who they were.
Kirk whips out his heater, and Spock's like, use of our heaters is expressly forbidden. Non-interference directive and all that, right? So instead, Kirk picks up a rock and lobs it what has to be an insane distance to throw a rock, right? The way the camera angle shot this distance was, he would have had to, that's like 100-yard pass.
Yeah. I think this is Vasquez rocks, by the way. I don't know.
I looked this up and it wasn't. It was someplace between the Simi Valley and somewhere else.
Okay.
I don't remember where else, though.
Cool.
So the rock lands behind the villagers, and it startles one guy, and his heater goes off, and another guy yells, "Damn it, Cheney, be careful with that thing."
You shot me in the face.
Not everybody's going to get that one.
No.
There's a chase sequence. The hunters know that there's villagers nearby now, and the villagers race off towards Kirk and Spock. Another shot rings out, and McCoy hears it this time. He calls up the Enterprise like, there's some shit going down. Get ready to beam us back. Cut back to Kirk and Spock takes a shot in the back. And this fall and roll was amazing. I love the stunt work in this scene.
Yeah. I don't think it was Leonard Nimoy.
No, it was definitely a body double for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But where they succeed in stunt work, they fail in makeup because Spock, despite not having any entry or exit holes in his shirt, is somehow bleeding green blood on both the front and back of his shirt.
Yeah.
So I guess they couldn't afford to fuck up a uniform too badly for this one.
No. So they just spill some Jell-O.
We've only got 12 of these left. Yeah.
I know. Just green. We can't get them dirty. Kirk goes back to see that Spock's been shot in the back, and I guess it's exit out the front, and he's looking for his phaser, and then he's getting ready to defend them with their phaser, but Spock's like, no, I can travel. And then they get to McCoy, ready to beam up, and they beam them up quickly, and McCoy calls ahead and says, to have medics standing by. And just as they are disappearing, the dark-haired villagers come up, and they're like, hey, where'd they go?
Well, which way did it go, George? Which way did it go?
They beam onto the platform, and Scotty's like, what the hell happened down there? As a gurney is wheeled into the room by none other than Dr. Mbenga.
I'm just a doctor now.
Yay! It's so cool to see him.
It is. So Mbenga is played here by Booker Bradshaw. He had a few guest appearances in the late 60s and early 70s. But The Girl from U.N.C.L.E. is his first credit. And he had a couple episodes of Tarzan and in a whole handful of shows that I've never heard of. But he did some voice work in the 80s, including 13 episodes of Alvin and the Chipmunks, which I watched like religiously as a kid.
Yeah.
I loved Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Me too.
But it was all like one-off background characters that,
That's awesome.
Can I just say that I am shocked that Becca didn't ask us a question about Mbenga for this episode? Because she's been watching Strange New Worlds with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, Babs, by the way. Holy shit, he's amazing.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Well, the character is established by Booker Bradshaw, who was amazing in this role too. He did a great job of creating this character with only like the 2 episodes that he was in. Anyway, they lift Spock up onto the gurney, and McCoy and Mbenga get to work. Vitalizer B, whatever that is, Coranolin, whatever that is, and a pressure packet that Chapel sprays with some kind of chemical from an Ecolab bottle again. It's like some gauze-looking thing, and she pulls out the old Ecolab bottle.
Look for the Ecolab Science Certified seal.
But we can't say shit about OSHA, so...
McCoy says, lucky his heart's where his liver should be, or he'd be dead now.
Thanks, McCoy.
Right.
Does not miss an opportunity. As they're trying to take care of him, we get a call from Uhura on the intercom tannoy system. Yeah. And she says, all decks, red alert, battle stations, go to red alert. And then Kirk is like, what the fuck? And she's like, we've got a Klingon vessel on our screen.
Sensors are picking up a Klingon battle cruiser.
Ah, my dear Captain Kirk.
My dear Captain Kolob.
Frankly, I never liked Earthers.
This station is swarming with Klingons.
I was not aware that 12 Klingons constitutes a swarm.
And so he's got to go. He's got to be pulled away while he's worried about his friend. And he just kind of gestures to Bones. And McCoy's like, I don't know yet. I don't know how he's going to do, you know.
Now, I have to say, I think this would have been a better place to cliffhang the cold open.
Yeah.
So had they gone all the way up to, right, they cut it at, they beam away as the other people run in. And I think the drama is right here. You cut away where is Spock going to live or not? And we don't know because Kirk has to leave.
I agree. Something I also noticed, and I meant to mention it in the episode, I think, with the Tribbles.
Okay.
And I don't know if you noticed it, but they stopped.
Not.
And I don't think I said anything, but they started pronouncing Klingon. Yeah. They stopped doing that, and from the Tribbles on, they're saying it correctly, or they're saying it as we know it, Klingon instead of Klingon.
Okay.
Trivia for anyone who's making up trivia.
On the bridge, Chekhov has the Enterprise positioned directly opposite the planet from the Klingons. And he thinks that they haven't noticed the Enterprise yet. And Uhura confirms that. She's just picked up a routine call back to their home base with no mention of the Enterprise. So for now, they decide to hold position on this far side of the planet for a while so that they're not picked up.
I'm just curious, like, if they can detect the Klingons, why can't the Klingons detect them?
Right.
And then Uhura's picking up all their radio communications as well?
Yeah.
So I guess, I don't know. I just thought curious.
Kirk makes the decision not to call up Starfleet because, opening the channel would give away their position to the Klingons.
Okay, so maybe
there's a lot of, like, what rules are we following today in this series in general, right? Like, the attention to consistency was not there. But even within this episode, like, can we scan ships on the opposite side of a planet? Like, does a planet block our ability to scan? Would it block the Klingons' ability to scan us on the other side of a planet, right? Can you hide behind the far side of the moon and hide from them or whatever?
Right.
And I gotta think, like, there's sensors. If you can scan a planet and tell me how many life forms there are on it.
Life forms. You tiny little life forms. Just love scanning for life forms.
So anyway, I say if you can scan a planet and tell me how many humanoid life forms there are on it, you can definitely scan the ship on the other side of the planet. I know there's a future episode or a movie or something where this is like we're hiding at the polar point on the planet because that masks us somehow or something. The magnetic field. Yeah.
And that would make sense, actually.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a scientist. What do you think I am? A scientist or something?
Kirk tries to call McCoy again, but McCoy's like, will you stop bothering me? I'll call you as soon as there's something to tell you.
So Kirk is thinking maybe the Klingons, his focus is back to the Klingons. Have they broken the treaty? Should they even be out here? And Scotty's like, this is kind of a hands-off planet, so how are you going to prove otherwise? But Kirk is like, well, when I left 13 years ago, the villagers didn't know how to forge iron, and now they've got a flintlock.
They kind of debate or argue here about whether it's possible for a society to go from barely able to forge iron to flintlock heaters in such a short period of time. And then, like, even Chekhov and Uhura get in on this argument, too. But finally, Kirk shuts them all up, but he quickly apologizes. He's being snappy. And he explains,
his friend Kirk.
I'm worried about Spock. And also, whatever happened to that planet down there that used to be so peaceful. So he hands Scotty the con and heads down to sickbay, where I'm sure he'll be a welcome visitor. McCoy's already told him, like, leave me the fuck alone. Let me do my job. I'll call you when there's something to tell you. So now he's going to go down there. Great.
Of course. So in the meantime, it's Mbenga that's basically doing a lot of the treatment. And unfortunately, they don't have any replacements for any organs that he's damaged. So he knows enough about Vulcan physiology to know that Spock can heal himself.
Kirk intends for himself and McCoy to beam back down and figure out what's going on. And McCoy is hesitant to leave Spock, but McCoy himself said that Mbenga interned on Vulcan, so he's a better doctor than McCoy already.
And that's not hard to do anyway.
No, it's not. It's okay, because, spoiler alert, because we know what happens. Because in Strange New Worlds, he's this chief medical officer, right? Mm-hmm. So in the timeline, he's the chief medical officer, and then something happens, and then the original series happens, and he's not the CMO anymore. He's just a physician that's working on the team. Mm-hmm. And so the retcon of that is that he like retired into this job or stepped down for whatever reason, like blah, 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 whatever. Mm-hmm. But like, I want Mbenga to come in and be like, bitch, I used to run this joint. Like, you're a shit doctor, and I can't believe I'm working for you right now.
Him and Nurse Chapel.
I
mean, they
absolutely
both did.
That's the scene I want.
Oh, well.
Kirk needs somebody that he can trust for advice, the same as he trusts Spock. And so that's McCoy in this moment. Kirk calls up to the bridge to tell Scotty to inform ship stores to have native costumes ready. Finally!
They finally thought about that.
How many times have we talked about this?
Yeah, even last episode, I think they should have done that before, but they did steal the costumes and wear them, but it was already too late. Their presence had already been, they already knew them.
Scotty warns that they might have to break orbit to stay hidden from the Klingon ship, which raises the stakes a little bit. Let's talk about this captain's log. Kirk talks about the tactical advantage of hiding from the Klingons, says that he can't risk calling Starfleet, so he'll have to use his own judgment. When the hell has he ever asked Starfleet for their opinion or permission or judgment on anything?
Again, there's it's almost like a difference in writing, and there's like political correctness there with him being a good captain and not being the renegade maverick that he usually is. And then also they're thinking ahead with aliens, exposure to the planet, so they're thinking ahead. It's like a whole complete shift in writing.
Mm-hmm. Then he says he's electing to violate orders and make contact with the planet's inhabitants. Okay, 23 years ago or whatever, he made contact with the planet's inhabitants. So what about that? And what about throwing a rock at them? Isn't that making contact with the planet's inhabitants?
Wherever it serves the story.
Exactly.
They get down to the planet's surface, and McCoy and Kirk are dressed in the leathery attire of the heel people.
Yeah.
And it's some kind of leather vest that like strings that you tie together and some brown pants. Kirk knows that they've landed a quarter of a mile away from Tyree's camp. And McCoy just wants to give him another moment to think about this. We want to interfere with these guys again. And Kirk is like, we're not going to interfere with the normal social development.
Kirk's like, that was my recommendation. That was my own recommendation. I wrote that 13 years ago. And McCoy's like, oh, I'm well prepared for this argument, my friend. I read that report. And he starts quoting it. Inhabitants superior in many ways to humans, left alone, they undoubtedly someday will develop a remarkably advanced and peaceful culture. Kirk's like, and I intend to see that they have that chance. So we're going to interfere with the culture.
Yeah, here we go off to interfere. So they go down their little mountain slopes and ridges, and right off the bat, they hear a screech.
Domo arigato, Mr. Mugato.
And then this primate-like ape costume, but that's like an albino and color, because it's got white fur. It's a ape face with a unicorn horn and some triceratops ridges around his back. I mean, what the fuck?
It's classic Star Trek monster of the week, for sure.
I love it. First, it throws McCoy, tosses him like a rag doll. And then it goes after Kirk. It bites him on the shoulder. And at this point, like, McCoy has recovered and he starts throwing rocks. What is this with throwing rocks? Which somehow gets its attention. And then McCoy vaporizes it with his phaser.
Oh my God! They've killed
The Mugato.
You bastards!
Now, I question.
Yes.
The phaser. I guess there are two types of phasers.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe at this point in the series, the Type 1 phaser is the little garage door opener thing.
Okay, because that is what McCoy has. It's like a tiny little square.
Right. And then it snaps into the pistol-shaped device and becomes a Type 2 phaser. That's my understanding. But again, these fuckers none of them like read each other's work or watch each other's episodes. Or
not at all.
Who the fuck knows?
So I guess this phaser is so powerful that it vaporizes the creature. And then McCoy goes to see about Kirk, and Kirk is shaking and shivering. And Kirk says, I took full poison. Fangs, contact the ship.
This is classic Shatner overacting here, which is just great.
And then he starts shaking and, that kind of thing. And I'm like, wow.
McCoy tries to call up the Enterprise, but apparently they had to leave orbit because there's no answer. Thank you for calling the USS Enterprise.
We're not available at the moment. Please leave a subspace message at the beep.
So McCoy gives Kirk a hypo spray, but he doesn't have any antitoxin for this particular poison. But you know who might? Tyree. And just then McCoy looks up and there's 3 hill people standing there. Now, are these blonde wigs?
They're so terrible.
Are so terrible.
They just like put them on their head. Didn't even like, okay, matched up the part.
Right?
Match up the fucking part.
Nah, just slap it on your head and off we go.
Yep, there we go. Yeah, they're all big and wearing blonde wigs, and they're all dressed like McCoy and Kirk. And so McCoy tries to talk to this one, and he's just not even, he's like completely stone-faced. He's like, are you hill people? Do you know somebody named Tyree? McCoy's like, a Mugato attacked him. He's James Kirk. He's a friend of Tyree's. Surely he knows him. And this guy was just standing there stone-faced.
Finally, McCoy's like, well, do something, damn it. He's dying. At the camp, they carry Kirk in, and one of the guys, Uton, says, take him to the cave. I bring Tyree. I really hate this shorthand for less civilized or whatever, where they just delete a few words from the sentence. This is how indigenous people were portrayed my entire life, right?
Yep. And that's how they were portrayed on TV.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, they don't speak complete English.
Right.
And I hate that too.
Yep.
And so not to mention the whole village, quote unquote, was basically a little gathering of people under some trees and some tents that were what you would see in an old Western that had indigenous people in it, those tents.
Yes. So we get a rare McCoy's log here. Kirk was right about these people. They are compassionate and gentle. Tyree is their leader now, and he's off banging his wife or whatever. So McCoy's got to keep Kirk alive till he gets back. But Kirk is in a state of deep shock.
Well, they put him on a rock sort of pedestal, and they've covered him with all kinds of furs to try to keep him warm because he's shivering because the poison's taking hold. But then McCoy has to get his shot in, and he says, you and your Garden of Eden.
Mm-hmm. You couldn't say, Kirk, you're a dumbass on TV in the 60s. So
right.
Outside, we see a couple of the armed villagers, and as they walk out of frame, Tyree and Nona step out from behind a tree, and Tyree says, "Was it good for you?"
She wipes her mouth and she's like, yeah, it's all right.
Almost 3 minutes this time.
I know we're awful.
Nona is played by Nancy Kovac, who is another one of those actors who made an appearance in everything.
She is gorgeous. Oh, my goodness. Just absolutely gorgeous.
She was in Alfred Hitchcock, I Dream of Jeannie, Batman, Perry Mason. Again, like all onesie-twosie appearances.
Yeah.
The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Get Smart, Bewitched, Hawaii Five-0. Whole bunch of the hits.
Cool.
Tyree is played by Michael Whitney, who appeared in all the other shows Nancy wasn't in. Gunsmoke, Rawhide, Gilligan's Island. Lots of Westerns like 12 O'Clock High, Daniel Boone, Bonanza, right? Lots of Westerns.
Nice.
Nona's trying to talk Tyree into getting some of these fire sticks, what they call heaters. She's like, you could be killing them and taking all their shit. But Tyree is a hopeful humanist here.
Yeah.
He sees the good in everybody. He's like, well, I'm confident like these villagers will return to their peaceful ways, someday in time. And Nona's like, in time, they'll kill you. Like,
right. I mean, I could see both, though.
Yeah.
Some would think that Tyree is kind of a fool,
mm-hmm.
like a hopeful fool.
Right.
And then Nona is more about like protecting her own, thinking ahead and anticipating what they're going to do based on what they're doing now. So, I mean, I could see both.
Yeah. He's kind of got his head in the clouds and she's kind of got her feet on the ground about this situation. She says that she is a Kanutu woman, which is apparently a rare thing because men seek them out because through them they become great leaders. So she's some kind of magic-y witch doctor or something, apparently.
Yeah. And then Tyree is like, well, I took you because you cast a spell on me. And she's like, yeah, and I got spells to keep you too. And she picks up a leaf or something, a plant that she had cut off. And she's like, remember this? The night we camped by the water? She's saying that she, I guess, kind of like drugged him a little bit. Like maybe spiked his punch, gave him some acid, whatever.
Right. She pulls up this weed and lights it on fire and takes a big puff and passes it around the circle.
So, and she's like rubbing the leaf on him again. And she's like, oh, did you really hate it though? You liked it. You liked it.
Mm-hmm. He pulls her into him and they start necking. And while they're making out, she's like scratching like nails into his arm with this leaf.
I'm guessing they just wanted to show that she's somehow intoxicating him again with this herb.
Yeah, some kind of aphrodisiac or something, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Tyree says, the night of madness brought up evil beasts from my soul. And I was about to write a sex joke here, but this episode beat me to it. Nona says, only one lovely beast, Tyree, my huge angry man. Boing.
Oh my God.
Only your one-eyed beast, Tyree.
Oh my God. So they kiss. He's shoving his tongue down her throat and she's giving it back. And then Uton comes up and kind of ruins the moment. He's like, can I watch?
Yes.
No, he says, forgive me, but there's some strangers in our camp and one of them has been bitten by a Mugato. And he says he knows you. He's your friend from long ago. And so Nona says, oh, that one.
So she's clearly heard some stories about Tyree and his totally straight, not at all gay friend Jim back in college.
Yeah.
Tyree is still smoking those leaves and he's all fucked up. So Nona tells Utan to bring him back once he's done tripping. In the cave, McCoy's heating up some rocks with his heater to help keep Kirk warm.
It's a heater.
It's a heater, making a heater with a heater.
But that's what Sulu did when he was stranded on that planet and he was freezing to death.
Asking for coffee, yeah.
Yeah.
Nona comes through the camp asking where the stranger is, and she walks into the mouth of the cave just far enough to see McCoy lighten up the rocks with this heater. And she's like,
oh,
yeah, she's like shook. She like can't even stay there. She goes back outside.
She's like, she's thinking probably to herself, like, them other villagers got fire sticks and they've got this. Obviously, she's, kind of Teresa says this could be to our advantage.
So Tyree comes running up, finally clear-headed, and obviously he's looking for his old friend, but Nona's like, listen, you want me to save him, but you've been keeping some shit from me. I need to know everything about this Kirk guy, starting with what you really did in that dorm room. and Tyree's like, ugh, I promised him I wouldn't tell anybody. He's like a brother. And she's like, well, being your wife makes him my brother too. Start talking.
Quickly or he dies. Back in sick bay on the ship, the indicators on Spock's bed is pretty low. And of course, Nurse Chapel's holding his hand.
This whole scene, especially in the context of what Strange New Worlds is doing with the whole Spock Chapel thing. This is amazing. I loved this so much.
I know. You know how like they are always jumping apart. And so in this scene, she puts his hand down when the door opens and M'Benga comes in and tells her, don't worry about the low readings on the panels because he's seen it before in Vulcans. And it's their way of concentrating all their strength on, basically healing himself in all the injured organs. It's sort of like a self-induced hypnosis. And Chapel's like, so he's conscious? And then M'Benga explains, well, in a sense, he knows you're here. He knows what we're saying, but can't afford to take his mind off of the healing that he's doing to his body. So M'Benga says, I guess he probably knows that you were holding his hand.
Majel played this whole scene so well.
Yeah.
So good. Her head, when he says he probably even knows you were holding his hand, her head snaps around and she's got that, oh, fuck, I'm busted look of panic on her face. It was so good.
But then she talks to Spock after M'Benga leaves, and she's like, a good nurse treats her patients that way. It proves she's interested.
Oh, she's interested, all right.
And again, this news really changes everything.
I didn't remember this Spock Chapel thing being this prevalent in TOS, but here it is.
Me either, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tyree and the Witch Doctor come into the cave and introduce themselves to McCoy. I think this was another attempt at using language to convey a less advanced culture. He introduces himself as Tyree, and then she introduces herself as Tyree's woman. Girl, you got a name.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
You are your own woman, and you don't need a man to be happy. Go on. Nona takes this thing out of her satchel. This thing looked like a pile of dog shit with like maybe a rat's tail coming out of it or something.
It was, do you ever play with those like rubbery toys that were like, they would stick to stuff? It was, I don't know what it's made of.
Yeah.
That's what it was. You throw it in, it would stick to like the window.
Yeah.
That's what that shit looked like. And it was like brownish black and.
It looked like dog turds to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Dog shit.
Well, apparently it's a root.
It's a root.
But,
of course.
But it's also like twitching in her hand. So there's some kind of what, and McCoy's like, whoa, look at that. And Nona says, well, you'd be surprised the twitching my hand can cause. Boing, boing, boing. Nona says that it's a mako root, apparently highly medicinal, but not everybody knows where to find it, how to use it, or how to pick it. She hands Tyree her knife and holds her hand out to him. And he takes this blade and slices her hand open. Speaking of overacting, Nancy really laid it on thick here.
Yeah.
She's like
writhing and convulsing, and it was very sexual too.
It was.
And I think it was meant to be,
yes,
honestly.
Of course. Finally, she places the root down on Kirk's wound on his bite, followed by slapping her sliced open hand on top of it. And another great blast of overacting.
Ew. Yeah, not sanitary, but whatever.
It's like Blood Brothers or whatever. You slice your hand and handshake or whatever.
Boy, we don't do that shit today. We know what that.
No,
that's not safe. We already know that ain't safe.
She says, "Take this of my soul, thine own, into thine deeply together. Your pain is mine, all mine. Your soul and mine together." And then she says, "Return. It is past. Return." And on those last returns, the camera cuts to, and this is not a joke, the camera cuts to Tyree, who has a drum now. Where the fuck did this drum come from?
He's beating it. Yeah, the whole indigenous, they're stealing like the indigenous culture, stuff from the indigenous culture, so it's weird.
Yeah. So he's beating on this drum, and Nona collapses across Kirk's sweaty chest, because of course we have to have that.
Gotta.
And Kirk wakes up, but he's still kind of groggy, talking about, boy, I just had the strangest dream. And he tells Bones, you did a good job. He goes back to sleep.
McCoy reaches over and removes what was the root, and it now looks like just a hardened rock, and it's not twitching anymore. And his wound is healed completely. It's gone from his shoulder.
No sign of bite marks or anything.
And then Nona, her hand is healed too.
This was a simple but fun bit of like lighting here. This lighting reveal I thought was really fun. So we get a close up on their hands, and her palm is in shadow. And then as McCoy turns her hand over into the light, we see that her hand is no longer sliced. That was a fun, simple little lighting reveal. I liked it.
Yeah.
Special effects don't have to be...
They don't have to have...
super crazy.
CGI.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as just camera angles and lighting.
Yeah.
So McCoy thanks her for saving his friend's life, and he's like, I want to learn more about this stuff.
He's like, I don't know if you've been watching Star Trek, the original series, but I'm not really the best doctor. And if you can kind of show me what you do.
I'm a doctor. What does he say? He would have said, I'm a doctor, not a medicine man. Or, you know what I mean? This is what he would have said. But Nona explains that their blood passed through the Maka root together, and their souls have been together. I mean, so now she's like, he is mine now.
Immediately at that moment, I was like, oh, shit.
I know.
I know where this is going.
I know. Damn it. Kirk wasn't even doing nothing, and he still can't. Women can't stay away from him. He's been dying on his deathbed, and they still can't stay away. So Tyree pulls her away and says, she must sleep also. And McCoy's like, what does she mean? Like he is hers. And apparently there's a legend that says when a man and a woman are joined in this manner, meaning blood and Mako root, he can refuse her no wish. But again, he says it's only legend. This was funny to me.
So McCoy wakes up to find Kirk at Nona's bedside. And Kirk's like holding his head like he's been out on an all-night bender. He's still a little confused. First, he asks McCoy, what are you doing here? And then that conversation wakes Tyree up, and Tyree like shoots out of bed on high alert. But they're happy to see each other. And Kirk's like, wait, what am I doing here? But he remembers the Mugato and telling McCoy to take him to Tyree's camp, knowing that Tyree would find a Kanutu to heal him. On cue, Nona gets up and sashays over to Kirk, and Tyree's like, not just any Kanutu, Jim, my wife. The end of this scene, I'm curious to know how you read this. Kirk's like, hey man, we got to go talk about the villagers and their fancy new heaters. We got to make plans. And Nona butts in a couple of times during this. She's like, good, we're way past the making plans stage. Tyree says, Jim, a lot has happened since you left. Come on, we'll speak of it. And Nona butts in again and says, and of things to be done. Kirk and McCoy leave this cave room, and as Nona goes to follow them out, Tyree puts his hand out to stop her and is like, we will speak of it. So I couldn't tell if this was like some misogynist shit, like go make brownies, sweet cakes, the men are going to talk. Or if it was like he's starting to distrust her.
Given what we know about like how they did women and how they portray women, it could easily be both, because she's the woman, she's, and they're in this tribal society and there's a hierarchy, but also he also knows she is kind of bloodthirsty, and he's trying to keep the peace just because of her nature. And he knows she's hell bent on getting guns and striking back. And so it could have easily been both. I don't know. Great observation.
Back in sickbay, the biobed readings are going bonkers, and Mbenga tells Chapel that's normal too. He leans into Spock and tells him that someone will be with you constantly, and when the time comes, they'll call for him. And he tells Chapel, any sign of consciousness, you call me. Oh, and by the way, when he wakes up, if he speaks, do whatever he says. And Chapel's like, you have no idea how long I have been dreaming of this exact role play.
Oh my.
She's in a dream. So they go back to the cave with Tyree and Kirk. And then Tyree's talking about how these fire sticks came to be on their planet. They appeared nearly a year ago, and since that time, a lot of his Hill people have died.
Kirk's like, have you considered passing some common sense gun reforms? And Tyree's like, they don't care about the dead. The needs of the heater owners outweigh the needs of dead children or something.
Yeah, pretty much. Have you considered background checks? So Kirk is like very curious about how they even make them. Are they making it themselves? Where are they getting it from? And Tyree's been snooping in their village, so he knows how it's being done. So McCoy's also wondering, they all think it's a Klingon. So they want to know if they've seen any strangers. And Tyree's like, no. They're like, let's go take a look. While it's dark. But Tyree is like, but the Mugatos travel at night also. You killed one of them, but they usually have a mate that's not far away.
Kirk pulls his heater, and he's like, you've seen how these work.
Nona comes up. There she is, butting in again. And she's like, oh, I've seen them too. And I know you got many ways to make Tyree a man of great importance. So she's always thinking of her man, but maybe a little bit of herself, but then also protecting her village.
She shows all of her cards here. Tyree told her all about the Starfleets in exchange for saving Kirk's life, and her silence about this knowledge also comes with strings. She wants to learn all about this advanced technology and such, and she plays the old, like, I saved your life, aren't you grateful card?
You owe me.
Kirk's like, I'm grateful, sure, but then he explains that humans were much like these people, spears and arrows. And then our weapons developed faster than our wisdom, and we almost nuked ourselves into oblivion. So we made up this directive, call it a prime directive, not to cause the same thing to happen to other worlds. It feels like Kirk's making the civilizations have to develop on their own time scale argument. He starts to say, like, just as a man must grow in his own way in time. And Nona cuts him off and is like, some are neither growers nor showers, Kirk. And the camera cuts to Tyree. So Nona's like, so you'll just let the villagers destroy us when you could help your friend and brother kill them instead? And this gets Tyree on his feet, and he slams his hands down on the table and yells, no! He's a pacifist. He refuses to kill. But Nona's pissed. She's like, it's kill or be killed up in here. And she tells Kirk, if you're his friend and you'd rather let him die than give him weapons, then he's got the wrong friends and I've got the wrong husband. She storms out. And again, this is another great example of Tyree being kind of the perpetual optimist, whether to his own, fault or not.
Death or whatever.
Yeah. He believes that Kirk will be able to help them without arming them, right? There's got to be a diplomatic solution to this problem that's not just shoot at each other. He's hopeful.
She, on the other hand, is just
she's ready to shoot first and never ask questions. So they're off to the village to do some spycraft, and McCoy asks Kirk what's bothering him. He says, if we find the Klingons have helped the villagers, there's certainly something we can do. And that is the thing Kirk is worried about. This is something they might have to do.
So they're sneaking around at night, and I'm trying to remember. So I took a note of the danger music. I loved it. And I can't remember because I was going to hum it.
That one?
Yep, that's it. Yeah, that one. Yeah, that's it. They played it all through this episode, and I've heard it in other episodes just in season 2, though. I've not heard it before that. I swear I've seen this village before, or in some movie, or maybe I've seen it in Star Trek.
So I looked this up too, and I don't remember, so I'm going to look it up again.
This whole little village that they're sneaking in looks so familiar. The buildings are smooth, and they've got tiled roofs.
Okay. The majority of the episode's location scenes were filmed at the Bell Ranch, separating the San Fernando Valley from Simi Valley. That's the one earlier that I couldn't think of. Additional filming at Paramount Pictures B Tank, where the village set stood, previously built for another production, but it doesn't say what production.
Okay. Maybe not Star Trek.
Right. We watch one of the villagers with a heater, sort of walking guard in front of a building. And while they wait, Kirk asks Tyree, supposing you had to fight, what then? And McCoy's like, Jim, this man believes the same thing we believe in, that killing is stupid and useless. You know, except for all those people that we've genocided along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kirk is like, so Tyree? And Tyree actually doesn't answer. He says, okay, let's go. And they're trying to knock out the guards, basically, that are surrounding the building. So Kirk sneaks around behind him, does the chokehold thing, and they grab the guns and the ammunition. Kirk and McCoy run off, and I guess Tyree is just kind of like the lookout.
Inside the building, sure enough, there's a Klingon.
Yep.
This guy is Krell, and he's played by Ned Ramera. Ned has indigenous Chitimacha ancestry and played a lot of Native American type characters, including in both an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Oh, really?
And
was he a Klingon?
An episode of Star Trek Voyager.
Oh.
Playing Native American characters in future Star Trek. So in The Next Generation, this was the episode Journey's End, where Wesley goes off with the Traveler and becomes a traveler of all space and time.
Hey, nerds!
Really?
Yeah. So this was, Wesley was like living with this indigenous tribe on a faraway planet or something.
Mm-hmm.
Was in that episode, I think. Anyway, he was one of the Native American type characters in that. And in Voyager, you might recall the episode The Fight, where we meet Chakotay's great-grandfather.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He plays Chakotay's great-grandfather. So, unfortunately, like, he was typecast due to his ancestry in most cases. But he made a great Klingon in this episode. I thought he was great as a Klingon.
Yeah. He had sparkly pants.
Yes.
They bringing back the sparkly pants for the Klingon. But yeah, I thought he did look familiar, even under the blackface and eyebrows and goatee. Yeah.
Krell is there to meet with the leader of the village, Apella, because he's got some upgrades for their heaters. Apella's late to this meeting and blames it on a quarrel between his people. He says, a division of some skins and a hill woman taken this morning. It's hard to divide one woman, and Krell suggests, well, just give her to the man who killed the most of her people. Yikes.
Well, that's Klingon for you. I mean, that's how Klingons roll. The others would see a profit in that, and, you know, and that it's like a sign of bravery if you kill the most people and you get a woman. Hey.
Right.
And he's like, I'll make a Klingon out of you yet.
So this suggests that not only have the Klingons changed this peaceful culture to fight with the other faction, but they're infighting too.
Yes, and the Klingons love that. I mean, it's like this planet is like their own little pet project in a way.
Yeah, they're trying to reshape this society in their own image in a way. Yeah.
They're fucking groomers, man. Groomers.
So the heater upgrade this time is in the Striker. Now it holds the priming powder more securely, so fewer misfires. And he promises when he comes back, he'll give him a rifled barrel, which will help them shoot further and straighter.
I'm curious, though. Like, they're being really careful about easing them into this whole thing with the weapons, because we know the Klingons have Klingons. Did I do that?
You did.
Klingons. Oh my God. We know that Klingons have the advanced weapons, so I'm just wondering why they're taking such care to like ease them into this. So it's weird.
I think to me it is right. The Klingons don't want them to have equal power either. Right. So we're gonna help you along, but we're gonna still kind of, you know, subjugate you a little bit so that we still have power over you.
Yeah.
Back out in the village, Kirk and McCoy are snooping around and they find coal and sulfur. So they go into this building and find the villagers' forge, along with evidence that indicates that these heaters aren't being made here by these people alone. The Klingons are definitely providing them and probably teaching them how to make more. So McCoy's scanning everything for the record and laments that they can't include a live Klingon in those records.
And then again, as if the universe heard him, here comes Krell and Apella. They hear voices outside the door, so they go and they hide. And it's Apella and Krell coming in. talking about, Apella's asking about how to get the grooves into the barrel. And then Krell's like, well, here, I'll show you. And they come into the forge. And Apella's like, I thought that my people would grow tired of killing, but you're right. They see it as easier than trading in pleasures. So he's right. Yeah, just is right into the Klingons' hands of, this is exactly what they're wanting to teach, that bloodthirsty, take everything that I want, regardless of who it belongs to, kill. Mm-hmm. And so Apella is just like, this is so much better than like being nice. But then, I don't know why the fuck McCoy's scanner starts making noise. He's messing with it. That's what he's messing with it. And it starts to make a noise. And it kind of alerts Apella and Krell of that there's somebody in there.
Legitimate question. Why do tricorders need to make noises anyway?
They shouldn't. It's for the audience. I mean, it's for us.
Or at least have a fucking flip the mute switch. I can put my phone on silent. Come on.
But sure enough, fucking McCoy's over there twisting knobs in the corner while he's supposed to be hiding. I'm like, Jesus
You
Christ.
Are useless.
Yes. So then they see Kirk and McCoy, so Star Trek fight! Kirk has to jump the Klingon because, they've already been discovered. So McCoy hits Apella with one of the steel rods, and then they go for the door, but then there's 2 more armed guards out there.
As the villagers motion them to move out of the building, Kirk and McCoy are able to spin around and take down both of these guys pretty easily, too. And as Kirk and McCoy make a run for it, we hear Apella off-screen yelling for guards. So they meet back up with Tyree, who is still holding his heater and guarding a villager. So the 3 of them take off, and we get kind of a small chase scene as they race out of the village while shots are fired at them. Hard cut to Spock in sickbay, and he is gasping for breath. This was a fun scene. I liked this.
That was cracking up.
Spock, who is apparently not quite conscious yet but able to speak, begs Chapel to hit him because the pain will help him regain consciousness. Chapel's like, yes, sir. And she grabs a ball gag and a flogger out of the drawer.
Oh, my.
So she's really shocked. She's like, hit you? What do you mean? He's like, blast you, strike me. And if I don't regain consciousness soon, it'll be too late. And so she starts slapping his face, like real like love taps. And he's like, harder. I fell out. And so she's like, even though she's crying, she starts slapping the shit out of him.
And Scotty comes in and he's like, what the hell are you doing, Lassie? I don't want to kink shame, but come on.
He tries to pull Chapel away and she's like, leave me alone. I'm trying to help him. And he's like, have you gone daft? And then M'Benga comes in and he helps Spock sit up before he takes over and starts slapping the shit out of him. And then Scotty's in the background holding Chapel, looking like was utter shock on his face. Like, what kind of S&M shit is going on here?
Finally, Spock stops the slapping. And M'Benga explains that this is some kind of like last minute fight to consciousness that happens. And Chapel tries to bedside manner Spock again, but he's back to his old self now. And Chapel's like, yeah, you are. Dick.
No, those Vulcans, man. Kinky fuckers, man.
Mm-hmm. Back at Tyree's camp, Kirk has decided to teach the men how to shoot rifles, which they seem to be pretty decent at already. And McCoy's like, Jim, we need to talk. So they dip off to the cave to talk privately. And McCoy's not real pleased with what's happening here. Again, with the Bible and Eden, he says, It's bad enough we've got one serpent in Eden teaching one side about heaters. You want to make sure they all know about it.
Well, I mean, what else are you going to let them be slaughtered? I mean, I get it, but what are you going to do? Just let them be defenseless and just get slaughtered?
Kirk's like, look, America has to show up for the little guy. It's kind of what we do. If Russia is arming countries, then we should arm the other side, like level the playing field.
Mm-hmm.
McCoy has, I think, perhaps the first aha moment of his career, as he is certainly on the show, as he realizes that maybe Kirk's lost his marbles because that witch doctor, something she said about you can refuse her nothing, and wouldn't you know, this is exactly what she wanted to happen, to get her side armed.
Nah. Kirk's like, that's completely superstition.
He's like, besides, she wants superior heaters, and we're not doing that. Kirk's plan is just to keep both sides equalized. If the Klingons give the villagers something better, then the Federation gives the hill people the same thing. Keep it even. McCoy's like, that is the dumbest shit I have ever heard you say. That will just condemn them to a planetary war that'll go on for years. And Kirk says, okay, fine, call me crazy. What is your sober, sensible solution to all of this then?
And what does he say?
McCoy never knows.
He's like, I don't have a solution. He does this all the time. He's like always telling people what they shouldn't do, but then cannot give a solution. But he's happy to tell him how wrong your solution is. But giving them firearms, basically, he says, is not the answer.
He does point out, though, that Tyree probably won't understand or agree with all of this. So Kirk's going to have to try to convince him. But because he's an anti-violence guy, he'll probably be one of the first killed.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirk says, well, war isn't a good life, but it's life. I felt some type of way about this line. So this requires the assumption that life is necessarily better than not life.
Right.
And I'm starting to not be sure to what extent I agree with that.
A life of trauma.
Yeah. Like,
is better, and pain is better than, I mean,
than not living. Yeah. You have to be you have to be in the pro living camp, which this is a weird conversation.
Yeah.
But like, there's a curve, right? At which there's a point which you surpass and go, maybe not living would be better than this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Years, decades of bloody wars. Wouldn't you just be like, what are we doing here?
At some point, you forget what you're fighting about after a few generations. You're just carrying on a war that your people before you started.
Yeah. Individually, I guess I can definitely see where a quality of life becomes a greater factor than whether you're alive or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And for a lot of people, that line is in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. How much we'll put up with, how much quality of life we will let go just to stay alive a little bit longer. And then I think there's a line that we all reach where that's not worth doing anymore.
Yeah. And it's okay.
Right. And that's why, like, if I'm for sure going to die and there's just a machine keeping me going, I want that.
I want to choose to go my way. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to fucking go out on drop me from an airplane and I'll put a parachute on, or, I'll do something crazy. Because if I'm going to go, I'm going to go out with style.
Well, if there's any way to make Tyree understand and get on board, it's the witch doctor. Cut back to the bridge. Spock is back in command, and the Enterprise hasn't been spotted by the Klingons yet, and they're re-entering orbit of the planet. It's almost time for rendezvous. But somehow, Chekhov was able to determine that the Klingons were beaming someone up.
Mm-hmm.
So he can scan them on the other side of the planet, but they can't scan the Enterprise again.
I don't know.
Back on the planet, Kirk's walking around and finds Nona, who has apparently just finished bathing in the river or something. And he apologizes for interrupting, but Nona says, "Oh, you're here because I wished it." Kirk's like, "Oh, I thought that was my idea." And she's like, "They always do." She pulls out that plant again, starts waving that weed under Kirk's nose. And Kirk's like, "Look, we need to talk." He's trying to get this out, but a couple more puffs and he's feeling pretty good. Do we need a date rape drug content warning on this episode?
It's sort of, yeah, because he's not. And it's this time. Normally, it's the man who's the aggressor, but this time it's the woman. It's still wrong. It's still very wrong.
Yeah.
Even though it's the woman, so she's manipulating him with this plant, and she's like, "Yes, you feel good, don't you?" Even though he came to actually have a conversation with her, and he's been completely derailed.
Yeah. She's date rape drugged him for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So they're foreplaying really hard, and Tyree walks by carrying a heater. This was some great face acting by this guy. At first, Tyree has a sort of like, "Oh, it's my wife and my good friend Jim from college" kind of smile on his face that very quickly turns into, "What the fuck, guys?"
Mm-hmm.
He pulls the barrel of his gun up and takes aim.
Kirk is like telling her, "I feel dizzy. Yes, you're lovely and you're just beautiful. but I feel dizzy. That's not consent, lady.
Right. Yes.
But they're kissing anyway. She's like, kiss me. And he's kissing her. And Tyree's like ready to shoot him. And this non-aggressive pacifist kind of guy is ready to kill another man.
Yeah.
Because he's boinking his wife. But he doesn't. And he just...
he can't bring himself to pull the trigger.
He's disgusted and he just runs. And I'm not sure if he's disgusted with himself or with Nona or with Kirk. Who knows?
Right. He throws the gun aside in disgust as he runs away. Kirk and Nona's tongues are having a Star Trek fight when a scream rings out nearby.
Domo arigato, Mr. Mugato.
Kirk is too deep in I'ma get my dick wet mode that he doesn't even recognize the danger of the Mugato, and he keeps holding on to Nona, and she has to like struggle to get away from him.
Well, because it's her fault. She drugged him, and he doesn't even know he doesn't even sense that the Mugato is dangerous. He's just trying to hold on to her, and she kind of deserved it. Star Trek fight!
The Mugato has Nona on the ground, and she's trying to roll and dodge. Kirk finally snaps out of it, and he jumps the Mugato from behind, but he's tossed off pretty easily. And in the end, Kirk pulls out his heater and vaporizes the Mugato.
Oh my God! They've killed
The Mugato.
You bastards!
Everything is an opportunity for her. So she goes over just to see how he's doing, and then she decides, she sees the phaser, and she decides, well, I'm going to hit him on the head with a rock and take the phaser. And that's exactly what she does. She leaves him on the ground, knocked out.
This is another fantastic effect. We don't see the hit.
That's true.
The scene
she's just
cuts.
Poised above it.
Yeah, she's kind of on the downswing, and then it cuts. And I thought that was a very effective choice. A lot of times that stuff, when they try to play it, like even some of the fight scenes, but definitely smack a guy over the head with a foam rock. You know, you got to do it without hurting the actor or breaking the styrofoam rock or whatever. And that never looks realistic, especially back then. So I think the cutaway is a classic horror move also. Yep. And
you know he's out, but we don't have to see it.
You don't have to see it. It's worse that you didn't see it, in fact. Yeah, this really worked for me. Tyree stomps back into camp like a moody teenager after a breakup.
She's kissing him. Yeah.
It's my best friend. And McCoy's like, where's your heater? And Tyree screams that he left it out there, and he points into the distance. So McCoy's like, you got to take me to the heater. We got to find this thing. You can't just leave it laying out there.
So they get back to where the Mugato had attacked Nona and Kirk, and all they do is they find Kirk, and Nona's gone.
Kirk is just starting to come to again, and McCoy, Tyree, and Utan arrive. Utan picks up the rifle and tries to give it to Tyree, but he's still a pacifist. Even through all of this, he's still a pacifist and refuses to do it.
Even though he was about to blow Kirk away.
Nona is running down a hillside when a posse of villagers come around the corner, and she decides to defect. She is just the biggest opportunist.
Yeah, but the way she did it was probably not a wise move on her part, in my opinion. So, yeah, she's like talking her way, trying to get into their village, saying, I bring you victory for Apella. And one of the guys was like, oh, that's Tyree's woman. And she's Kanutu. They're like, we can't trust her, you know? And so Nona is like, take me to Apella because he'll be the one who has the balls to use this weapon. And she's waving around the phaser.
So they don't really trust her or believe her. And one of these guys tries to grab a hold of her, and she threatens to kill them all with this small box. But they still don't believe her, and she struggles to get away from each one of them kind of one by one. Back at camp, McCoy is prepping a hypo spray for Kirk, but he refuses it. And Kirk kind of feels around his waist and discovers, his phaser is gone. But he's pretty sure he knows who took it. Nona is struggling with these men, and content warning, hit your skip button if you need to.
Yeah.
One of these guys holds her while the other guy comes up and kisses her.
They totally didn't have a sense of that kind of stuff. Maybe, or maybe they did. I don't know. I'm really surprised that we see all that kind of stuff
am too,
on TV.
She's yelling about how this new heater is far more powerful than their fire sticks. But these guys persist, and she screams. She's got her dagger out, but she's no match for these guys. Just then, Kirk, McCoy, and Tyree come running over the hill to see this rapey scene. Tyree yells out to Nona, and the villagers assume that this whole thing was a trap.
It's a trap!
So it's really sad because of her demise. So one guy's like, it's a trap. The woman, and he blames Nona because it looks kind of like a trap. And he stabs her with her own dagger. And then he shoots McCoy in the arm. Utan shoots back. And then we have a Star Trek fight.
Star Trek fight!
Where they like do the normal hand-to-hand.
Duking it out.
Yep.
McCoy goes to check on Nona. Tyree goes berserk on a guy, smashing his head with a rock over and over and over and over again until Kirk finally stops him. So we get some great face acting again from Tyree. This is that like enjoyment of killing thing that the villagers were talking about. He's feeling this adrenaline rush for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
And that realization kind of crosses his face as Kirk takes the rock away from him. And he has this like, what have I done? Look.
Mm-hmm.
So Tyree goes over to McCoy and Nona. She's dead.
Oh my God! They've killed you bastards!
And more bad news, Tyree has tasted battle and now he wants more heaters. And he sends Utan off to chase down the two guys that killed she who was his wife. And he pledges to Kirk that he will kill them. This moment is innocence lost.
Mm-hmm.
Tyree has gone to the dark side.
Give in to your anger.
It's like Anakin. It's a moment in time that is going to change the course of their whole planet.
Yeah.
So McCoy is searching around in the dirt, and he finds the phaser, and he gives it to Kirk, and he's like, tomorrow in the palm of her hands. McCoy's like, well, you kind of got what you wanted, you know? Kirk's like, no, this is not what I wanted. It was just bound to happen. This was just bound to happen.
Kirk takes the communicator from McCoy and calls up Spock. And McCoy's like, Spock, you're alive? Little hopeful tilt to his voice. And Spock says, an illogical question, Doctor, since obviously you are hearing my voice. And McCoy says, well, I don't know why I was worried. You can't kill a computer. Again, with this nonsense. Speaking of nonsense, Kirk asks Scotty how long it would take him to reproduce 100 flintlocks. And Scotty's like, 100 what now, you say? And Kirk says, 100 serpents. Serpents for the Garden of Eden. Beam us up, Mr. Spock. End of episode.
No closure on this episode at all. What a shitty way to end this story. I mean, we know what's going to happen, but we weren't left hopeful like we usually are.
No. And I want to say that I read a fact that this episode is the only episode in the series, or the only episode so far that hasn't ended on the happy, triumphant music that tends to play at the end of an episode. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know I read some factoid about that.
Boy, I'm sure glad that's over with.
I'm happy the affair is over.
Me too.
A most annoying, emotional episode.
Yeah, but I learned something today.
When dreams become more important than reality, you give up travel, building, creating.
One jealous god, if all this makes a god.
By sparing your helpless enemy, who surely would have destroyed you, you demonstrated the advanced trait of mercy.
Frankly, I was rather dismayed by your use of the term half-breed. You must admit, it is an unsophisticated expression.
I want to point out in the beginning, like this whole hill people being compassionate and gentle, even towards outsiders like Kirk and McCoy. And this continues to play out in what I think is the big theme of the episode. At several points in the episode, Tyree is pressured into betraying his values of peace and nonviolence. Mm-hmm. And he keeps holding tight to those principles, even though it could put him in more danger. On the other side of that table, Kirk is also sticking to the principles of the Federation's non-interference directive by refusing to arm them. And then Kirk changes his position, right? He's been a never negotiate with terrorists kind of guy up to this point. But there are times that really challenge what we believe, and we could discuss the merits of this decision. But what just happened is that Kirk's deeply held beliefs were challenged, and having to actually face the situation. And then he changed his views when presented with new data. It goes by so fast, but like I hope people got that at least subconsciously.
Yeah, and the views also changed for Tyree.
Right.
It's the fact that they were peaceful people. It kind of makes me think of how history has portrayed indigenous people.
Very much so.
Initially as, savages. They were always called savages and they're ready to fight and stuff. But maybe they weren't. Maybe at some point they were like the hill people who were, living off the land and just living in peace. And along came the white people.
Right. Absolutely.
And we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
But they were thriving on this continent before the colonizers came.
Right.
And introduced them to the flintlocks and all kinds of other war and death.
Yeah.
So yeah, you change your position to survive sometimes, or I don't know.
This episode also made me think a lot about the United States getting involved in shit all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
There is a large group of people in this country that believe we should put up like 83,000 feet walls around the country and never interact with anybody outside. And then another group of us who see things happening today, I would say like Russia and Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
And we have had to, as a government, play out all of those scenarios and decide how involved we should be. Like,
yeah,
is it our role to help level the playing field? Is that the right thing to do for us to roll up to Ukraine and be like, here, we're gonna give you equal weapons to what Russia has in that analogy?
And we're doing that. So we've done it. Other countries have done it. They're trying to help them out.
We've done it a lot. Yeah.
Oh, it's such a complex. There's no black or white. It's a complex problem because in the case of Russia and Ukraine, Russia's threatened to scorch the world if we get involved. So what do? Do we stay out of it completely to save our own hides?
And for how long?
Yeah.
At what point does it come where we have to step in?
Yeah. So it's such a complex issue.
Yeah. It just, in the end, I guess it goes to remind us that, especially because there was no clean ending, I think that was that was a statement being made about whether you do get involved or not, and how that decision, regardless of which one may be the right decision, how much that impacts this whole, in this case, planet full of these people.
Yeah, and when they've already been taken off of their natural course by the Klingons, so by the Klingons interfering,
how do you undo that?
Two wrongs make a right.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because
two wrongs do make a right.
Because that's the solution, right? Is we try diplomacy first. You go to the villagers and you say, "Hey, these Klingons,
don't listen to those
you can't trust these people, right? They're just trying to cause all kinds of problems and take over."
And then they're gonna take your planet. You just keep on. You watch.
So maybe I'm a little disappointed that attempt wasn't made. Not even as a throwaway, like, we tried to diplomacy with these people and that didn't work, and so now we're going to give guns to our side,
Right. I think Picard would have tried.
Oh, for sure. For sure. All right, well, now it's time to honor the dead.
Okay. We had two Mugatos. We had Nona and the Mugatos.
Oh, yes.
I think that's a band name.
Oh, my God, that's a great band name. Hell yes. And one of their songs is Domo Arigato, Mr. Mugato.
Domo Arigato, Mr. Mugato.
I love it. I love it.
It's dead, Jim.
We are assembled here today to pay final respects to our honored dead.
A Mugato lashed out at Kirk, pinned him down, and took a bite. But McCoy saved the day and phasered it, much to our delight. But see, when there's one Mugato, there's always a mate who would be looking for blood, and it was lying in wait. Sure enough, it attacked Nona, and she almost met her fate. But Kirk finally came to his senses and killed the primate. And then we have Nona, who only wanted to even the score with the other village since they had guns galore. She taunted them with a phaser she had snatched, but 4 against 1 they stabbed her and she was outmatched.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, because there's about to be a lot more death on that planet.
Oh, yes.
Let's get right to business.
Fine, I'm authorized to pay an equitable price. Federation has invested a great deal of money in our training. They're about due for a small return.
Listen, we pay off percentages. We're entitled to a little service for our money, huh?
Is this the way your citizens do business? Their right of petition?
They pay their percentages and the boss takes care of them.
Is there anything else?
Well, there are a lot of great ways to help support Humanist Trek. One of the free ways to do that is to tell people about us. Leave a review and a rating wherever you happen to listen to Humanist Trek. One of the best ways to support us, though, is to give us some of your Federation credits by becoming a patron of the show. We want to thank our founding admirals. A special thank you to Russell, Allie, Peter, and Sarah. And thanks to everybody who supports the show. We appreciate you all so much.
Thank you, patrons.
Thank you, patrons. Patrons get early access to every episode, merch at various levels, and the joy of knowing that you're, again, supporting my still currently unemployed ass. So head on over to patreon.com/humanisttrek. Pledge as little as $3 a month. It really makes a big difference and really means a lot.
I assume you're loitering around here to learn what efficiency rating I plan to give your cadets.
Trainees, to the briefing room. Is that all you gotta say? What about my performance?
Aren't you dead?
I don't believe this was a fair test of my command abilities. There was no way to win.
There's no correct resolution. It's a test of character.
Now, what is that supposed to mean?
I am understandably curious.
May I ask you a question?
Who's been holding up the damn elevator?
All right, let's bring Becca back in for the exciting answer to last week's Starfleet Academy Cadet Challenge. Last time on Humanist Trek, you asked us.
In this episode, we meet a creature called the Mugato.
Yes.
However, in the original script, the creature was called Gumato. Why the change?
I think we both came to the conclusion that it meant something in some culture, some language, I mean. It meant something else in some, language.
It was either derogatory or it just meant something.
Yeah. Gumato is go fuck yourself in Japanese or something. I don't know.
If it is, I'm totally using it.
While that was a great guess, you were both wrong.
Damn it!
Incorrect.
Fuck. Well, all right.
So DeForest Kelley kept mispronouncing it, so they changed it. And if you look at the closing credits, it's still called Gumato in the closing credits.
I'll be damned.
No
and you
shit.
did mention during our episode that you said that McCoy kept calling it something different.
It was like a Mogatu or something. He was
Mogato.
Instead of Mugato, It was Mugatu. So that's interesting. Next week, we'll be reviewing Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 20, Return to Tomorrow. Telepathic aliens take over Kirk and Spock's bodies. And I do not remember anything about this episode at all.
And I do, again, because I watched it. I just leave it on and it just goes and I'm working or doing something in the background and it's in the background.
Okay. All right. Well, what's our question? Not that it's helped you at all. Not that it's actually given you an advantage.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, no, it hasn't. It really hasn't.
What is our question for Return to Tomorrow?
At the end of this episode, Kirk says, "I promise." William Shatner used the same line as a pitchman for what product in the 1970s?
What?
Fucking hell.
God damn you. A product in the 70s. I can't even think of a Rubik's Cube. I don't know what the fuck was a product of the 70s.
That says I promise? Maybe, did he do like insurance ads or something? I don't know.
God, I don't know.
And there was another question you could have asked, but I'll say it during the show because I would have got this one right. I don't know what commercials he did.
I don't either. Becca's enjoying every fucking minute of this, by the way.
Well, I can't help it.
Okay, I don't remember. I mean, if I hear it, I'll be like, oh, I remember now. But
I think your insurance guess is as good a guess as any.
Because, what else would you advertise and then make a promise? Some kind of insurance
Yeah. Okay. We'll go
That's what I'll go with.
We'll go with that. We've locked in our answers. If you want to play along, you know how to do that. No cheating, no Googling. Head over to your nearest social media app. Share this episode. Use the hashtag Starfleet Challenge. Tell us your answer, and we'll pick out our favorite. Next time on Humanist Trek, Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 20, Return to Tomorrow.
Live long and prosper.
Kapla!
Humanist Trek is available wherever you replicate your podcast. Follow us on all the social medias at Humanist Trek. Become a patron at patreon.com/humanisttrek. Open hailing frequencies to podcast@humanisttrek.com and visit our website, humanisttrek.com. Humanist Trek is a production of Sarah Austin Media.